It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Well, today I want to talk about ways you can recognize you got the wrong leader trying to help you grow your managed IT services business, trying to help you implement your managed IT services business. I want to share with you some things to look for so you know you probably got to make a change. And the reason I'm going to do today's episode is I had a nightmare last night. I'm laying there in bed and all of a sudden I see something in my dream and I'm like, holy crap. I hope there's no dealers out there doing this. What made me think of this? What made me dream this? So I'm going to get on the Sharp Interactive board. I'm going to share with you that dream because I'm hoping that this really doesn't happen out in the real marketplace. And then I want to share with you some things to look for to determine whether or not you got the right leader helping you with managed IT services, that transition, development, or continuous management. So let's jump on the Sharp board and start out with the dream. There it is, folks. I had this dream. Now, I don't know if anybody would actually do this, but there's a couple of clowns driving around in a car videotaping themselves. You know, they're telling the marketplace. Everybody likes to do these videos now. Some of them are pretty crazy. But they're doing a video telling the marketplace that they're looking to, talk to you about IT services. And I'm just imagining this going on in my head, and I'm thinking, would anybody really do this? I call it vulnerable engagement IT. I mean, first of all, you're telling the marketplace that you want to come out and help them with their IT infrastructure. You're a disciplined company, but yet you're doing videos while you're driving down the highway. The customer's thinking, hopefully my IT is going to be safer than you two clowns driving down the highway recording yourself. I'm just saying, they could be thinking that, right? And I just thinking about the car, driving down the road, the clowns inside it, what are they talking about to themselves? I wonder when the copier lease is up. Because, see, they might be running around trying to sell IT services, but everybody that's watching this video realizes, that they're really just a bunch of copier guys. They probably have the cart, pulling behind the car with the copier on it. Let's pretend we're IT, get them to talk to us about IT, and then we'll quickly pivot into the copy machine, find out when the lease is up. Folks, this was a nightmare. I don't want this to happen in real life. I mean, they're out there talking about how they could definitely save you money. It's kind of like managed print services. We're going to save you 30% on your managed IT services. Give us a call. Could you imagine if this really were true? We buy everything. We buy everything. We'll buy out any lease you got. We'll buy out any lease because we like to buy stuff out. So whatever you want us to buy out, we'll buy out and we'll add it to the new contract. Doesn't really matter to us because we don't factor in any real cost anyway. We're losing all our money on our IT deliverable. See, this is a freaking nightmare. I mean, they're probably thinking, free assessments, we will never overcharge for our expertise, it's all free. Folks, big sign on the front, we can't help it. We can't help it, meaning we can't help IT. So anyway, this would be a terrible thing to actually see in real life, vulnerable engagement IT services. But just in case anybody was thinking about doing videos while they're driving down the highway, talking about going out and making IT service cold calls, probably not a really good idea is what I'm thinking. Anyway, folks, let's move on. I want to talk about some of the things that can alert you that you got the wrong leader heading up the IT services division. Just this first clue is absolute spot on. Whoever is the leader dismissing charging for assessments is definitely not the leader to sell them. Whoever's dismissing the need to charge for assessments is definitely not the leader to sell them, and it's not the leader that you should even think about putting in charge of your managed IT services platform. Because if they truly understood what it takes to deliver managed IT services remarkably, they would insist that every assessment the company did was fee-based. If these leaders truly understood what it takes to deliver managed IT services successfully, remarkably, they would insist that every assessment they do is fee-based. It's just a fact, folks. It's a fact of reality. It is an absolute fact of reality. They have no customer persona defined. If your leader isn't beating up the team about making sure that we sell to the right customer, the customer that's clearly defined, the customer that's willing to pay the right price. Folks, there's so many people out there right now that don't have a clearly defined customer profile. It's scary. They think that managed IT services is like selling print equipment. Hey, if the customer can't afford the good program, let's sell them the used program. Too bad we don't have used IT services. You know, you go into the marketplace, well, we know you really can't afford the robust, remarkable services our company has, but hey, we traded some IT services in from a company down the street and we could go and sell you that at a discount. Could you imagine if our industry could do that? Could you imagine? They'd be out there prematurely upgrading IT services so they could sell the services they got traded in. Sounds totally insane, isn't it? What I'm talking about doesn't even make any sense. But the reality of it is, this is how the industry thinks. This is how that print industry thinks. And they need to change that thinking. Project management's an afterthought. You got IT services companies out there, my friends that transition from print to IT services, and there's no project management. Or the project management they have is an afterthought. They don't clearly define all the costs associated with building the project, implementing the project. They don't account for the costs. Subscriptions are not monetized correctly. Folks, there's a lot of subscriptions being resold. Everybody's moving into the cloud. Everybody wants these subscription contracts. Some of y'all are selling subscriptions, but you're not monetizing the servicing that it takes to manage that subscription. You don't have the right business acumen, understanding of the subscription, and you're not sure what to charge for the servicing of it. Some of you might be just marking up the subscription 5 or 10 points, just coming up with some number, but in all reality, you're not managing the cost to manage it. No data investigations to determine creep. Think about it. If you're not mining your data, if you're not looking for all the costs that are associated with that contract, all the time against that contract, the creep that comes in is going to be atrocious because there's no one saying, hey, hang on a second. Why was this server admin individual putting all this time against this contract when that could have been a level 1 or 2 tech doing that? Who's managing this? Who's looking at the data? Who's determining the creep? Folks, it's super important. You got to be into your data. Leaders must know the numbers. You know, there's one thing I really liked about my good buddy Milton Bartley down there in Nashville at ImageQuest, because he knows his numbers. I mean, whenever you ask him a number, he knows it. Look, if you're running a huge organization, you're probably not going to have every single number in the top of your head. But those department leaders, those leaders in those divisions, they should damn sure know their numbers. They should know them by heart. They should study them. They should know them. You're running the help desk, you should know what the worst activity on that help desk is. How much time does the number 1 call take that help desk? What's the number 1 call about? Password resets like it used to be 20 years ago? What's the activity on the help desk that you understand defined by numbers? How are you going to improve the numbers if you don't know? This is why I hate when IT service providers outsource their help desk. Because there's so much information that could go through that help desk that could help you deliver even more remarkable services if you only knew. But when you rely on a third party, what do you get? A report shows you the millions of calls they cleared remotely, you know, that you would have cleared remotely yourself. What about all those calls the customer made where there was an issue that had your help desk received the call, could have analyzed that a little bit better, would have had data on these types of calls, would have helped you improve your remarkability. Accountability is argued in favor of the team over the realities of the marketplace. When leaders will argue against accountability, so let's just think about this. You got the ownership of the company, if you will, throwing in some accountability, telling the leaders we're going to look at the numbers better, telling the leaders we got to account for our costs better, whatever the accountability is. And then those leaders will argue against that accountability in favor of the team. versus in favor of the market realities or the end user customer. Folks, when that happens, you got the wrong person in charge. There's nothing wrong with arguing for your team. But when you argue for your team in favor of your team over in favor of the marketplace or the customer realities, you're the wrong leader. You don't have enough, you know what I want to say. You're not strong enough. You're not strong enough to lead. You're too passive. You want to probably get along with everybody. Get along with everybody is not going to cut it in this ever-changing world we live in. So folks, think about the cost center of your IT services. It's so much different than the cost center of print services. It's about people, it's about processes, it's about parts, all that stuff. Okay, we get all that. But in the print sector, the costs were never managed to the scrutiny that you need to manage cost in the IT center. If you look inside that print sector today, I will guarantee, I don't care who you are in the industry, if you look at the time against tickets that your service techs right now do in the print sector, you'll find out they're only covered about 50% of their time. I'm not saying they're screwing off 50% of their time. I'm just saying they're not accounting for it against the contract. You know it. In the IT services sector, you have to account for all of your time against the contract because the payrolls are so much different for each people that touch that customer, interact with that contract, if you will. And without true accountability against the ticket, against the contract, you're going to have a whole lot of creep. You're not going to make any money. And you're going to be out there selling contracts for $1,500 a month thinking you're hitting home runs. You need to have a floor. A lot of successful IT services companies are now convinced that the floor is 10 grand a month in services. Anything less than that, you can't deliver profitably. I agree with that number, by the way. My good friend Milton will say 5,000, but only if that customer's on a projection to get to the 10,000. And so he understands the persona of his customers. He understands what customer is going to go from 5 to 10,000. He understands it. How many of you understand your customers? How many of you have a clearly defined persona of a buyer? How many of you have a floor of what you're going to sell? How many of you are driving around in a car doing a video talking about showing up and doing an IT services call? Hopefully none of you. Hopefully that was just a bad dream. Folks, some things to think about because everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.